I confessed my darkest secret to my husband, a true infidelity story. As I sit at my desk, the screen of my computer casting a soft glow in the dim light of my office, I can't help but feel the weight of the world pressing down on me. My name is Hannah, and from the outside, my life looks like a dream. I work as a travel agent, crafting escapes to exotic locales for others, while I live in a quaint ivy covered house with my husband Scott, an engineer with a passion for fixing things, and our German Shepherd Tank, whose loyalty knows no bounds. Our home is filled with the warmth of laughter, the clinking of glasses during dinner, and the soft snoring of Tank at our feet. It's a life many would envy, a life where every day seems to promise joy and fulfillment. But as I arrange a couple's romantic getaway to Paris, a city known for love, I find myself wrestling with shadows that no one else can see. The cursor blinks on my screen, waiting for me to finalize the itinerary, but my mind drifts. There's a storm brewing inside me, one that's been gathering strength for months, perhaps years. It's not the usual stress of deadlines or the occasional client's unrealistic expectations. No, this is something far more insidious, something that gnaws at the very fabric of my existence. I glance at the framed photo on my desk, a snapshot of happier times. Scott, Tank, and I, all smiles, captured in a moment of pure bliss. Yet the smile I wear now feels like a mask when I've become adept at wearing. The truth is, I've been carrying a secret, a burden that's been growing heavier with each passing day. The guilt I feel isn't just about the time I spend away from Scott or the trips I plan for others instead of us. It's about the lie I've been living, the facade of perfection I've upheld. Every time I laugh, every time I plan another dream vacation, I'm reminded of the darkness I keep hidden, a darkness that threatens to consume everything I hold dear. I remember the day it started, not with a bang, but with a whisper. A simple, seemingly innocuous event that set the wheels in motion. It was during one of Scott's late night tinkering sessions in the garage. I was supposed to be asleep, but insomnia had become my silent companion. I heard the clatter of tools, the muffled curse, and then silence. That silence was heavier than any noise could ever be. I got up, my heart pounding in my chest, not from fear of what I might find, but from the dread of what I already knew. There, in the dim light, I saw Scott. His face a mask of concentration, but his eyes told a different story. They were haunted, filled with a sorrow that mirrored my own. That night, as I returned to bed, I realized that our perfect life was built on a foundation of secrets, each one a crack in the facade. And now, as I sit here planning another escape for someone else, I wonder if I'm not just planning their getaway, but my own escape from the truth. The phone rings, pulling me back to the present. It's another client eager for their slice of paradise. I answer with a practiced cheerfulness, my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil within. But as I discuss the romantic dinners by the Seine, the moonlit walks, I can't shake the feeling that I'm not just selling a dream, but perhaps unknowingly planning my own downfall. What could possibly be troubling Hannah, the woman who has it all? The answer lies not in the destinations I send others to, but in the journey I've been on, a journey fraught with secrets, lies, and the looming fear of what might happen when the storm I've been hiding finally breaks. The day started like any other. Scott left early for a business trip, leaving me with Tank and a list of chores. I decided to tackle the garage, a space cluttered with Scott's tools and projects. As I sorted through the mess, Tank followed me, his tail wagging his eyes, full of that unconditional love dogs are known for. I found myself talking to him, sharing my frustrations about work, about feeling trapped in a routine. Tank listened, his head tilted in that adorable way, and for a moment I felt understood. The garage, usually a place of mechanical noise, and Scott's presence felt different, quiet, almost intimate. As I sifted through old boxes, I stumbled upon a locked metal box hidden beneath a pile of old car parts. My heart skipped a beat. This wasn't just any box, it was one I had seen Scott handle with a peculiar care, always locking it away when he thought no one was watching. I sat down on the cold concrete floor, Tank by my side, his head now resting on my lap, offering silent comfort. Tank, I whispered, I've been keeping something from everyone, even Scott. It's eating me up inside. Tank's ears perked up, his eyes locked onto mine as if he could sense the gravity of my confession. I took a deep breath, the weight of my secret pressing down on me. You see, Tank, before I met Scott, I was involved with someone else. Someone who left a mark on my life in ways I can't erase. The memory flooded back vivid and painful. His name was Alex. We were young, reckless, and in love. But it wasn't just love. It was chaos, a storm of emotions and decisions that spiraled out of control. My voice trembled as I recounted the tale, the garage walls seeming to close in around us, the silence amplifying my confession. Alex was into some not so legal activities. I got pulled into it not because I wanted to, but because I loved him and I thought I could change him. But instead, I ended up in a situation where I had to make a choice that haunts me every day. I paused, my hands shaking, as I remembered the night I had to decide between my future and Alex's freedom. I betrayed him, Tank. I went to the authorities. I told them everything. He went to prison, and I ran away from that life, from that guilt. I changed my name, my identity, everything to escape the consequences of my actions. Tank's eyes were still on me, his presence a balm to the raw wound of my past. I never told Scott because I was afraid. Afraid that if he knew the real me, the me that could do such a thing, he'd leave. Or worse, he'd see me differently. Not as the woman he loves, but as someone capable of betrayal. I looked down at the locked box, my fingers tracing the cold metal. And now I find this. What if Scott knows? What if he's been hiding something from me too? The thought was terrifying. The idea that our perfect life might be built on mutual secrets, each one a potential earthquake waiting to shatter our world. I lean back against the garage wall, feeling the coolness of the concrete through my shirt. Tank, what do I do? Do I unlock this box and face whatever's inside? Or do I keep running, keep hiding, hoping the past stays buried? Tank nudged my hand with his nose, a gesture of reassurance. I sighed, the decision heavy in my heart. Maybe it's time to stop running, to confront the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Because living with this secret, it's like living in a cage of my own making. The garage, once a place of Scott's solitary projects, now felt like a confessional, a space where I could finally unburden myself, even if only to Tank. As I sat there, the morning light filtering through the small window, casting shadows over the tools and the locked box, I realized that perhaps the key to my freedom wasn't in escaping my past, but in facing it head on with Tang by my side, offering the silent support only a loyal friend could give. As the days passed, my time in the garage became my escape. One evening, after a particularly draining day at work, I found myself alone with Tank. The loneliness, the stress, and the wine I had with dinner began to blur the lines of reality. In a moment of vulnerability, I broke down emotionally in the garage. I screamed, cried, and threw tools, overcome by the loneliness I had buried for so long. It wasn't planned. I completely lost control, not in anger, but in emotional collapse. I didn't know how it happened. It was an accident, a lapse in judgment fueled by loneliness and too much wine. Tank stayed near his calm presence, anchoring me as I sat in tears. The next morning, the sun was barely up when I woke, my head pounding from the wine and the weight of my actions. Tank was at the foot of my bed, his tail wagging gently as if nothing had changed. But for me, everything had changed. I felt a surge of nausea, not just from the hangover, but from the realization of what I had done. I tried to push it from my mind, to bury it under the routine of daily life. But every time I looked at Tank, the memory resurfaced vivid and unyielding. I couldn't shake the feeling of having betrayed not just my husband Scott, but also the trust and loyalty Tank had always shown me. Days turned into weeks, and the incident in the garage became a silent specter haunting our home. I avoided the garage, avoided looking at Tank for too long, avoided even thinking about that night. But avoidance was not a solution, it was merely a temporary reprieve from the storm brewing inside me. One evening, as I was preparing dinner, the doorbell rang. It was unexpected, as we rarely had visitors unannounced. I opened the door to find a woman standing there, her face familiar yet out of place. "Hello, Hannah," she said, her voice steady, but her eyes searching mine. "I am Emily, Alex's sister." My heart skipped a beat. Alex, the name I had tried so hard to forget, the past I had run from. "Emily, what are you doing here?" I managed to stammer, my mind racing with possibilities, none of them comforting. "I need to talk to you about Alex. Can I come in?" Her tone was polite but firm, leaving no room for refusal. I nodded, stepping aside to let her in. As she entered, Tank came bounding up, his usual friendly self unaware of the tension that now filled the room. Emily's eyes softened as she saw him, but then she turned to me, her gaze piercing. "I've been looking for you, Hannah. Or should I say Sarah?" she said, my old name, the one I had left behind with Alex. I felt my world tilt. "How did you find me?" My voice was barely a whisper. "It wasn't easy," Emily admitted. "But Alex, he's out now. He served his time and he's changed. He wants to make amends, to talk to you." The mention of Alex being free sent a chill down my spine. The past I had so carefully locked away was now knocking at my door. "Literally, I can't," I said, my voice breaking. "I've moved on, Emily. I have a life here, a husband, a dog. I'm not that person anymore." Emily's expression hardened slightly. "You might have moved on, but what you did, it had consequences. Alex lost years of his life because of your decision. He deserves closure, and so do you." The room felt suffocating, the walls closing in. I glanced at Tank, his presence a stark reminder of my recent indiscretion. Here I was facing the consequences of my past while also grappling with the guilt of my present. "I understand," I finally said, my voice steadier than I felt, "but I need time to think, to process this." Emily nodded, her face softening. "I'll give you that, but please consider meeting with him. It might help both of you find some peace." After she left, I sat down heavily on the couch, Tank coming to rest his head on my lap. The weight of my secrets, both past and present, felt like an anvil on my chest. I knew I couldn't keep running from my past, nor could I ignore the new. Dark Chapter 1 had opened with Tank. The lines between right and wrong, between past and present, were blurring, and I was at the center of this maelstrom. That night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, Tank snoring softly beside me. The decision loomed large: confront my past with Alex or continue to hide, letting the secrets eat away at me from the inside. But there was another decision equally pressing. What would I do about Tank? The act in the garage, it was a mistake, a moment of weakness. Yet it had happened, and I couldn't undo it. As dawn broke, I made a resolve. I would meet Alex, face the consequences of my past actions. And with Tank, I would seek forgiveness, not just from him, but from myself. I would start by being honest with Scott about everything. The path ahead was fraught with pain and an uncertainty, but perhaps, just perhaps, It was the only way to find redemption, to rebuild the trust one had shattered, both in my past life and in the life I had built here. With a deep breath, I whispered to Tank, "We're going to make things right, boy, together." And with that, I stepped into the storm ready to face whatever lay ahead with Tank. By my side, a silent witness to my journey towards truth and reconciliation. The days following were a blur of guilt and avoidance. I couldn't look at Tank without feeling a wave of shame. I threw myself into work, planning trips with an almost manic energy, hoping to escape my own mind. Scott returned and life resumed its normal pace, but I was different. Every time Scott mentioned Tank, my heart raced. One evening, as we sat watching TV, Scott casually mentioned that Tank seemed off lately, less playful. My stomach churned. Was it my fault? Had I changed our dog's behavior with my actions? The thought haunted me, pushing me towards a decision. I decided to confront the truth, not just about my past with Alex, but also about what had happened with Tank. The next day, I took Tank for a long walk in the park, needing the open space to clear my head. As we walked, I talked to him, not expecting a response, but seeking some form of absolution. "Tank, I'm sorry," I murmured, my voice barely above a whisper. "I've made mistakes and I need to fix them. I need to be honest with Scott, with myself." Tank looked up at me, his eyes full of that unconditional love, and I felt a pang of resolve. I knew what I had to do. Back home, I waited for Scott to come back from work. The house felt different, charged with an energy of impending change. When he walked through the door, I greeted him with a kiss, but my heart wasn't in it. "Scott, we need to talk." I said, my voice steady, but my insides trembling. He looked at me, concern etching his features. "What's wrong, Hannah?" I took a deep breath, the words heavy on my tongue. "I've been keeping things from you, things about my past and something that happened recently." Scott sat down, his face a mask of confusion and worry. "What are you talking about?" I recounted my past with Alex, the betrayal, the change of identity, everything I had kept hidden. Scott listened, his expression shifting from confusion to shock, then to a pained understanding. "And recently," I continued, my voice faltering, "I did something I deeply regret with Tank." Scott's eyes widened, and I could see the hurt, the betrayal in his gaze. "What do you mean, Hannah?" I explained, as delicately as I could, the incident in the garage, the loneliness, the wine, the moment of weakness. Scott's face was a storm of emotions, but he didn't interrupt. "I'm so sorry, Scott. I've been carrying this guilt, and I couldn't bear it anymore. I need to make things right, not just with you, but with myself." Silence hung between us, heavy and oppressive. Scott stood up, pacing, his hands running through his hair. I I need time to process this, Hannah. This is a lot." "I know," I whispered, tears threatening to spill. "And there's more. Alex's sister Emily came to see me. He's out of prison and he wants to meet." Scott stopped pacing, his gaze sharp. "And what do you want, Hannah?" "I want to face my past, to find closure. I want to be honest with you, to rebuild what I've broken." He nodded, his face unreadable. "Okay, we'll figure this out. But I need space." Hannah space to think. That night, Scott slept in the guest room, and I lay awake, the silence of the house echoing my solitude. Tank, sensing the tension, stayed by my side, his presence a small comfort in the vast emptiness of my guilt. The next morning, I called Emily. "I'll meet Alex." I told her, my voice firm, "but it needs to be on my terms." "Understood," Emily replied, her voice softer than before. "He just wants to talk, Hannah, to understand." I agreed to meet at a neutral place, a cafe downtown, away from the home I had built with Scott. As I prepared for the meeting, I felt like I was stepping into another life, one I had left behind but could never truly escape. The cafe was quiet, the hum of conversation a soothing backdrop to my racing thoughts. Alex was there, looking older, more worn, but his eyes still held that spark of the man I once knew. Sarah, he said, using my old name, his voice a mix of nostalgia and pain. Alex, I replied, my voice steady. It's Hannah now. We sat, the air thick with the weight of our shared history. I'm sorry for what happened. I began the words feeling inadequate. I know, he said, his gaze dropping to his coffee. I've had a lot of time to think to regret. I wanted to thank you in a way for making me face the consequences of my actions. The conversation was strained, filled with apologies and explanations, but there was a sense of closure, a mutual understanding of the paths we had taken. As I left the cafe, the weight of my past felt lighter, but the present was still a storm I had to weather. I returned home unsure of what awaited me. Scott was in the living room, tank at his feet, both looking up as I entered. I met with Alex, I said, sitting down across from him. It was necessary. Scott nodded, his expression softening slightly. And us, Hannah, where do we go from here? I reached out, taking his hand. I want to rebuild our trust. I want to be the person you deserve, the person I've always wanted to be. He squeezed my hand, a small gesture that felt like a bridge over the chasm between us. We'll take it one day at a time, Hannah. But I need you to be open, to be honest. I will. I promised, my voice thick with emotion. And I'll start by being honest with Tang too. He deserves better. Together we sat the silence, now filled with a tentative hope. I knew the road ahead would be long, fraught with challenges. But for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was walking towards something, not away from it. With Scott and Tang by my side, I was ready to face the storm, to mend what was broken, and to find a new kind of peace in the truth. Unable to bear the weight of my secret any longer, I decided to confess. I waited until Scott was in a good mood after a successful project at work. I took him aside, my heart pounding in my chest. Scott, there's something I need to tell you. I began, my voice barely above a whisper. The words that followed were the hardest I've ever spoken. I watched his face as confusion turned to shock, then to a mix of hurt and disbelief. The silence that followed was deafening. Scott stood up, walked to the window, and stared out into the night. I could see his reflection, his jaw set, his eyes distant. I I had an affair, I confessed, the truth spilling out like a torrent. Before we met, I was involved with someone else. His name was Alex, and he was not a good influence. I got entangled in his world, and when the authorities caught up, I made a choice that I've regretted every day since. Scott turned back to face me, his expression unreadable. And Tank, he asked, his voice strained. I took a deep breath, the next part even harder to admit. After you left for your business trip, I was alone, overwhelmed by everything. One night, I had a breakdown that night. I lost myself emotionally, of loneliness, and I deeply regret it. The room felt like it was closing in, the air thick with tension. Scott's face contorted with pain, his eyes searching mine for something, anything to make sense of what I had just revealed. Why didn't you tell me sooner? His voice was a whisper, but it carried the weight of betrayal. I was scared, Scott. Scared of losing you, scared of facing myself. But I can't keep running from my past, from my mistakes. I need to make things right, not just with you, but with myself. He paced the room, his hands running through his hair, a habit when he was deeply troubled. I need time, Hannah. Time to think about all of this. I understand, I said, my voice breaking. And I'll give you all the time you need. But I want you to know I'm committed to fixing what I've broken. I met with Alex today to find closure, to understand, and maybe to forgive myself. Scott stopped, pacing, his gaze sharp. And what did he say? He's changed, Scott. He served his time and he's trying to make amends. He thanked me in a way for forcing him to face the consequences of his actions. It was necessary for both of us. Scott nodded, his face softening slightly. And us, Hannah? Where do we go from here? I reached out, taking his hand. I want to rebuild our trust. I want to be the person you deserve, the person I've always wanted to be. He squeezed my hand, a small gesture that felt like a bridge over the chasm between us. We'll take it one day at a time, Hannah. But I need you to be open, to be honest. I will. I promise, my voice thick with emotion. And I'll start by being honest with Tank too. He deserves better. Together we sat the silence, now filled with a tentative hope. I knew the road ahead would be long, fraught with challenges. But for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was walking towards something, not away from it. With Scott and Tank by my side, I was ready to face the storm, to mend what was broken, and to find a new kind of peace in the truth. The days that followed were a mix of awkward silences and small cautious steps towards understanding. Scott and I started attending counseling, a decision we made together to navigate through the wreckage of my confessions. Each session was a step into the unknown, but it was a path we chose to walk together. During one session, as we sat across from our therapist, Scott finally spoke up about his feelings. I feel betrayed not just by the affair, but by the fact that you didn't trust me enough to share your burdens. The therapist nodded, encouraging me to respond. I was protecting you, or at least that's what I told myself. But in reality, I was protecting myself from the fear of losing you. It was a painful admission, but necessary. The sessions helped us peel back the layers of our relationship, revealing the vulnerabilities and the strengths we had overlooked in our daily life. Meanwhile, my relationship with Tank also needed mending. I started spending more time with him, not just as a pet, but as a companion who had been there through my darkest moments. We went on long walks, just like the one where I had first apologized to him. This time, it was about rebuilding trust, showing him the love and respect he deserved. One evening, as we walked through the park, I felt a sense of calm I hadn't known in a long time. Tank, I'm sorry for everything, I whispered, kneeling beside him, my hand resting on his head. You've been my silent confidant, and I promise to honor that trust from now on. Tank looked up at me, his eyes full of that unconditional love, and I knew we were on the path to healing. Back home, Scott and I began to share more about our days, our fears, and our dreams. It was a slow process, but each conversation was a brick laid in the foundation of our renewed commitment to each other. One night after dinner, Scott brought up a topic we had been avoiding. Hannah, about Alex, do you still have feelings for him? I shook my head, my heart heavy with the truth. No, Scott. What I felt for him was a mix of love and fear, a toxic combination. Meeting him again, I realized that part of my life is over. I'm here with you, and I want to build our future together, not dwell on the past. Scott listened, his expression thoughtful. I believe you, Hannah, and I want to move forward too, but it's going to take time for me to fully trust again. I know, I said, reaching for his hand, and I'll be here every step of the way, proving that I'm committed to us, to our life together. The journey was not just about confession, but about transformation. Each day was a testament to our willingness to confront the past, to embrace the present, and to hope for a future where our secrets no longer held power over us. With each passing day, the storm inside me lessened, and in its place grew a resolve to live with integrity, with Scott and Tank by my side, navigating through the complexities of love, trust, and redemption. In the days that followed, our home was a battleground of emotions. Scott moved out temporarily, needing space to process what I had done. I was left with Tank, whose presence was now a constant reminder of my mistake. I sought therapy, trying to understand my actions to find forgiveness within myself before seeking it from Scott. Months later, Scott returned. We sat down not as husband and wife, but as two people trying to salvage something from the wreckage. He spoke of his pain, his confusion, and his love for me despite everything. We decided to try counseling, to rebuild trust, to find a new normal. As for Tank, he remained our dog, but the dynamics had changed. I learned to see him not as a confidant in my darkest moment, but as a creature of innocence caught in the crossfire of human complexities. Can Hannah and Scott find their way back to each other, or will this be the end of their story? The air in our home felt different when Scott walked back through the door. It was as if the walls themselves held their breath, waiting to see if we could mend what had been broken. His eyes were guarded, his movements cautious, as if he was stepping into a minefield of emotions. I've been thinking a lot. Hannah Scott began, his voice low, almost a whisper, about us, about what happened, about what we could be. I nodded, my heart thudding in my chest. I know, Scott. I've been doing the same. I've started therapy, trying to understand why I did what I did, to find a way to forgive myself. He looked at me, his gaze piercing through the layers of guilt I had wrapped around myself. I want to understand too, Hannah. I want to try for us for what we had. The counseling sessions became our sanctuary, a place where we could speak truths that had been too painful to voice at home. Each session was a step forward, a slow dance of revealing and healing. I felt like you didn't trust me, Scott confessed one day, his voice thick with emotion, that you couldn't share your burdens with me. I reached for his hand, feeling the warmth of his skin, a stark contrast to the coldness that had settled between us. I was protecting you, or at least that's what I told myself. But in reality, I was protecting myself from the fear of losing you. Our therapist, a gentle woman with a voice that seemed to soothe, the very air nodded. It's important to understand that trust isn't just about sharing the good times, but also the darkest parts of ourselves. And so we continued session after session, peeling back the layers of our relationship. Each revelation was a step towards understanding, towards rebuilding. With Tang, the journey was different but equally profound. I took him on long walks, not just for exercise, but for the quiet moments where I could speak to him, apologize, and try to rebuild what had been tarnished. Tank, I said one evening as we walked through the park, the setting sun casting long shadows. I'm sorry for everything. You've been my silent confidant, and I promise to honor that trust from now on. His eyes, always so full of love, seemed to understand. He nuzzled my hand, and for the first time since that night, I felt a genuine smile touch my lips. Back home, Scott and I began to share more about our days, our fears, our dreams. It was a slow process, but each conversation was a brick laid in the foundation of our renewed commitment to each other. One night after dinner, Scott brought up a topic we had been avoiding. Hannah, about Alex, do you still have feelings for him? I shook my head, my heart heavy with the truth. No, Scott. What I felt for him was a mix of love and fear, a toxic combination. Meeting him again, I realized that part of my life is over. I'm here with you, and I want to build our future together, not dwell on the past. Scott listened, his expression thoughtful. I believe you. Hannah and I want to move forward too, but it's going to take time for me to fully trust again. I know, I said, reaching for his hand. And I'll be here every step of the way, proving that I'm committed to us, to our life together. The journey was not just about confession, but about transformation. Each day was a testament to our willingness to confront the past, to embrace the present, and to hope for a future where our secrets no longer held power over us. With each passing day, the storm inside me lessened, and in its place grew a resolve to live with integrity, with Scott and Tank by my side navigating through the complexities of love, trust, and redemption. As time wore on, our relationship began to take on a new shape. It wasn't the same as before. It couldn't be. But it was something new, something built on the ashes of our past mistakes. During one of our counseling sessions, our therapist suggested an exercise. I want each of you to write a letter to the other expressing what you've learned about yourselves and your relationship through this process. That night, I sat at my desk, the same place where my turmoil had begun, and started to write, Dear Scott. I've learned that love isn't just about the joy we share, but also about the pain we endure together. I've learned that trust is fragile, yet it can be rebuilt, not as it was, but stronger with more understanding. I've learned that I'm capable of making grave mistakes, but also of seeking forgiveness and change. I promise to be open, to be honest, and to cherish every moment we have together, knowing now how easily it can all slip away. With all my love, Hannah, I folded the letter, placed it on the table for Scott to find, and felt a lightness in my chest, a release of the burden I had carried for so long. For the next morning, Scott handed me his letter. His handwriting was as steady as ever, but the words within were anything but. Hannah, I've learned that love is not just a feeling, but a choice, a daily decision to stay, to fight, to forgive. I've learned that your past does not define you, but how you handle it does. I've seen your strength, your vulnerability, and your desire to make things right. I choose to trust again, not blindly, but with eyes wide open, knowing that we both have the capacity for growth and change. Yours, Scott. Reading his words, I felt tears prick at my eyes, not of sadness, but of relief and hope. We were not the same people who had started this journey, and that was okay. We were better, more aware, more committed. Together, we sat on the couch, Tank at our feet, his tail wagging gently, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. We talked about the future, about the possibility of starting anew, not just for us, but for our family, which now included Tank in a more profound way. I want us to move forward, Scott said, his voice firm yet gentle. I want us to build something new, something that acknowledges our past but isn't defined by it. I nodded, feeling the weight of our shared history, but also the lightness of our shared future. I want that too, Scott. I want us to be a testament to love's resilience. And so we decided to take a trip not as an escape, but as a new beginning. A place where we could write the next chapter of our lives together with Tank by our side, his presence a reminder of our journey through darkness into light. As we planned, I realized that the storm I had feared had passed, leaving behind a clearer sky, a path forward. With Scott and Tank, I was ready to face whatever came next, knowing that together we could weather any storm, rebuild any trust, and find peace in the truth we had fought so hard to uncover. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this story. This will help us create more engaging stories for you.